Don't move. Check this out. I did it a minute ago.
Hello and welcome to 7 Blue Pixels, where we take some of the tools and techniques that some of your favourite online trends. Today we are looking at the 2008 Skittles advert. Yes, I know it's an old advert, but it's actually incredibly creative in its concept and something that I think a lot of brands nowadays could learn from. Wink wink. It came from the story of King Midas, where King Midas, everything he touched turned into gold. The character in the advert, everything he touches turns into Skittles. Now it sounds really fun and his co-workers absolutely love it in the advert, but imagine if the character was real, it would actually be quite traumatising. But ignoring all the mental health trauma, let's learn how to do the effect. So we're going to go into Cinema 4D and we're going to use Insidium's fused Xparticles. We're going to use Xparticles as a simulation method to ensure that we have our Skittles falling from our object. We're then going to use UV unwrapping and Photoshop to make our Skittles or sweet confectionary. And then we're going to be using Redshift to render these out and taking it into After Effects.
Oh my god!
It was really great collaborating with Ash from 2B Media on this project, and we look forward to collaborating further with them to give you a lot more skits. So here's how to make a object become particles, and we're going to be using Insidium's Xparticles for this. So how do we do this? I'm going to go into the asset browser, I'm going to go to models, and I'm going to type in table. And we're just going to find something that we can use. So I think in the original example, I used something like this. And what I did, I went into here and just deleted the marble top. Brilliant. So now we have a table. So now one of the best things you'll learn in visual effects is only use what you need. So we don't need all this stuff. And if we go into the, looking at the faces and the wireframe here, we don't need all of this. You know, we don't need the screws and all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect objects and delete. And then we're just going to go into our remesh. I'm just going to maybe drop this down to like maybe 25. So already we've made things a lot easier for ourselves. Connect and delete. And so we're going to go right click, extensions, Insidium, collider. I'm just going to drop this down to maybe about 10, 25 and 25 variants on that one. And I always just like to do normals on both sides just in case. You never quite know with these things. And where we're using somewhat low poly, it should be fairly reasonable to read. So what do we do from here? So we're going to turn off our dining table mesh. We're going to go extension, Insidium, particles, XP system. I like using the XP system because it keeps everything in one place. So we're going to go emitter. And in the emitter shape here in the object, we're going to change this to object. And we're going to drag in our dining room table. So if I go to the start and go one frame in, you can start seeing that we have particles forming. But if I whack this up quite a bit, turn the speed off, and let's keep the radius to 3 for now. Okay, and I'll change this down to shot, and let's go frame 1 and for 1 duration. Let's increase the particle count. And I'll go again. As you can see, we're starting to get the particles, but they're kind of dead center. We want the ability to kind of just mesh them up a little bit. So we're going to go object, and we're going to change the emit from polygon center to polygon area. So if we go back to our start and we go 1 frame in, we're starting to fill out the form and the silhouette of that table, and that's exactly where we want to begin. Now we know we're in a good place. So we're going to go display, and we're going to change it from squares to circles. This gives us a rough idea. So now, for example, we know that each one of these circles is going to be 3 centimeters. That gives us a better visualization of how we're going to be rendering these when we use Redshift. So I'm going to drop these down to maybe 1. Brilliant. So now we get more of a better idea of what it is that we're looking at. So we're going to go into extended data, and I'm just going to add some rotation just so that there's a little bit variance about what's going to happen. We don't want much, but we just want enough that every particle is slightly different. So if we play, as you can see, nothing happens. Okay, let's just increase this to 300 frames just so we have length. Nothing happens. How do we get this doing what do we want it to do? So say for example we have someone bashing their hands on it and we want their hands to ignite the collapse into the sweets falling down. So we're going to go into Nexus. We're going to grab a gravity. And what this will do, this just automatically, bang, everything just hitting the deck. Okay, but at least we know gravity's working. But we want to be able to control this. So we're going to go into Nexus. We're going to go into Infectio. And we're going to change color mode to use groups. And we're going to add the two groups for incubating and infected. So if we go incubating, we're going to move this into our groups. Infectio, add group. Now particle group 2 is the one that we want to focus on most, okay? So let's add a seed object and let's bring this all the way to the top. Let's go one frame in. Okay, so now we have our particles. So we want to bring this in so it looks like maybe one hand activates here, and let's control drag and do another one here. So someone's hit their hands on a table, either side, like in our original example, and this is how we're going to break it from those parts. So if we press play from here, we see the infection growing, as you can see down here. We see the infection growing and it infects all the way to the edge of the table, but the gravity has already taken hold. So how do we fix that? Okay, so firstly what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get these two seed objects. I'm going to go into their coordinates. I'm just going to get their transform data here. I'm going to go maybe 20 frames in. I'm going to mark keyframe there, and then from the start just bring these up so they don't activate immediately, so they have to kind of come down into it. So I'm going to go into gravity and I'm going to go groups affected, and in groups affected I'm going to change to particle group 2. Now what you'll see here is, if we go frame by frame now, anything that is starting to become affected is our deep dark blue here. And then anything that has been infected is our orange. And so what we've done, we've gone into our gravity and we've said, hey, anything that has now turned orange can now be affected by you. Which is brilliant, because now what happens is that as the infection grows across the table, we're able to control the gravity. So that's exactly what we want. And of course we can maybe turn the gravity down a little bit. So let's maybe, divide that into half. And look at that, we get a little bit more control. So what about if we want it to affect more particles or less particles? So we're going to our Infectio and we can have a look at our search radius. So our search radius is looking for a particle group of 10 centimeters between the points. But say we want to affect more than 3 particles within that space. So let's increase this to 10. And let's see what happens now. Immediately we get a much stronger growth, which makes us feel that as the table is being hit with the hands, more of it is being infected immediately. It's more of an immediate effect. So this works brilliant for what we want. And then obviously you can go in and you can add any other kind of additional things that you want here. So I could add in a push, knowing that our particles are 1 centimeter, change this to maybe 1.5, whack up the strength to 75%, for example, and change the group affected to group 2. So only those that start falling will start pushing apart from each other. And the same in any of these. We can go into NX and let's just say Nexus Turbulence, particle group 2. So only those now falling, let's whack this up something stupid just so we can see it, but only those now falling will get the turbulence. So as we play, so it's a bit much. We could drop that down. However, as you can see on the floor, as they hit each other, they are pushing each other away. But that is how you make your Skittles effect. Now, how do we make the Skittles? Nice and easy. What we're going to do is we're going to go into a new project and we're going to get a sphere. And we're going to drop these segments to something quite low. So let's maybe go to 8. We're going to leave it as standard and we're just going to flatten. So we're going to press C to make this editable. And we're just going to flatten this down a little bit so we get something a little bit more sweet shaped. Then we're going to go into our UVs. And we're going to go into face. And we're going to select all our faces. And we're going to go to UV unwrap. And we want it cubic. You could try any of these however you want. You could go cubic 2, fit UV to canvas, or max UV, or however you want it to be. However, my suggestion would be just go cubic 2 and then just with each one of these just scale them up just so that it fits the islands a little bit better. So we go back into here, just going to scale this up, and we're just going to fill the island a little bit better. Perfect. So as you can see, this one seems to be the top, and these ones down here seem to be the bottom. Wonderful. So I'm then going to go up and I'm going to go new texture. I'm going to make it 2K and I'm just going to name this Sweet UV. Going to hit OK. We've got our UVs there. I'm going to go into layer and I'm going to get create UV mesh layer. And then I'm going to file, save texture as, save it as a Photoshop file, save it out. So let's go into Photoshop. Okay, so we're in Photoshop, and as you can see, we have our background layer here and our UV mesh. So we want to focus what's going on in the center here. Say, for example, we want to make a red Skittle. I'm just going to create a new layer. And because this is quite an easy one to do, I'm just going to go into here. Our color picker, I'm going to make a red, and I'm just going to press G for our paint tool and just smother it in there. Brilliant. So now we know that within these bits, we've got a perfect red, a nice solid red that goes across the whole thing. I'm then going to go and bring in my logo. Brilliant. So this is the 7 Blue Pixels logo, and knowing that this is the top one, I'm just going to place this on here and maybe just scale it down a little bit. Brilliant. And then from here, what I can do is just turn off these layers and press save, Control S. We're going to go back into Cinema 4D, and we're going to go back into our standard view, and we're going to go into a new material. So double click, new material. We're going to open up the node editor. And then from here, we're going to drag in our Photoshop file. We don't have to, copy the path location. It's entirely up to you. I normally press no, so I know exactly where my textures are. And I'm just going to put this into the output color. So if I bring in the render view as well, and I just dock that into the side here so we can see. As you can see, we've got our texture here nice and bright, and I'm just going to drop the reflection just down a little bit because the sweets don't necessarily reflect that much. Okay, so we have our sweet texture here, and I'm just going to drag this onto our sphere. And if we have a look at the top, we have our sweet. Brilliant. So how do we make this sweet become part of our particle selection? Okay, so let's have a look. So we're going to go back into our particles, and within our emitter, we're going to right click, render tags, Redshift object. So as you can see, the particles aren't actually appearing in our Redshift render view. But if we go to down here, we go particles, and we change this to point instances, we can see exactly what we're seeing there. So if we go back into our sphere and we name this sweet, and let's copy this and paste it into our scene here. So as sweet is much bigger than we need it to be, so I'm just going to scale it down and just move it out of the frame. But it's here, definitely viewable. Cool. So within our Redshift object, I'm going to change this to custom objects and bring in our sweet. And immediately we start seeing our suite here, but it's obviously far too big. So I'm just going to change the scale multiplier down to something a little bit more usable. And if I zoom in, you can see all our suites are making up our table. And if I play it from the start, you can see all our suites. And so what you can do, you can bring in multiple different suites. So let's just bring in 2 more, and let's just maybe use the materials that we already got from the table that we had to begin with, just for demonstration purposes. And we bring in suite 1, suite 2. Change this to random. And as you can see, we're starting to get a mixture now. And the animation plays exactly how I want, and that's how we would render it out. And that is how you make a Skittles style TV advert with Xparticles Cinema 4D. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment if you have any suggestions or you just want to ask a question. And I think this video here is what YouTube recommends you watch next, and this one is what I recommend you watch next.